This might just be the strangest tier list I've ever done. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking Stranger Things. We've done this before where I've taken all of the characters and ranked them, but this time we're solely focusing on Season 4. The newcomers, the old-comers, and the reoccurring characters. Everyone that we know and love, what their role was in this season, and how I like them. I'm factoring in a lot of things here. Performances, likability of the characters, what they had to do this season, their arc, and whether or not they served a significant role. But I need you all in the comments down below. Who are your favorite characters? What tiers did I get wrong? Did I get right? There's no right answer, but that's why I have you all here to start that discussion. And if you like this video, if you like this tier list, drop that thumbs up. We may just be working on some more tier lists for the future, and of course, Stranger Things videos. As you can see, here is the tier list. We have your standard S, A, B, C, and D, not including an F tier. I don't think there was a tragically bad character this season, just characters that were underutilized. But I did switch a few things up. There are 3 MVPs this season, and I will be putting 3 of those characters on that top tier. We also have a couple of jerks. Now, being a jerk doesn't necessarily mean I hate the performance or I think the actor does a bad job. That's just the role of their character. How am I going to separate that? Well, I created a tier for jerks. Let's start with Papa. He's back. He returned in this season, still alive, and in my opinion, he played a fairly significant role, especially in what Eleven had to do, kind of her mission of the season, bringing back out her powers and what she's truly capable of. He's also sort of a jerk, but we're only putting people on the jerk tier if that's all they do throughout the season. But I did start to kind of buy the turn of his character until inevitably he did somewhat betray Eleven. He's always on his own little motivation train. We're going to put Papa on the B tier. Next up, we have our 2 officers who kind of run the town of Hawkins. Chief Powell and Officer Callahan. Rob Morgan plays Chief Powell, who is one of my favorites. I'm kind of biased because I met him and he's awesome. But in terms of their role, I thought it would be a bit bigger towards the back half of the season because there is that tragedy in Hawkins. So I'm like, where's the police? We see them rushing in, but we don't get individual performances in the final few episodes. They serve their purpose. They do what they need to do, trying to keep the kids out of trouble, and they're the biggest police characters. But I can't put both of them on anything higher than the C tier. I do think Rob Morgan gives a bit of a better performance, but they're both solid and they're both serviceable. Next up, you have Jason and the Jocks. He and his group of cool kids at the school, right? They're going around and think they know everything, but at the end of the day, he is heartbroken because of what happened with Chrissy, so he's set out on this path of revenge, even though he doesn't even know what he's getting himself into at the end of the series. Listen, I was satisfied with his death. When that pit opens up and mows through his body, I'm like, yeah, I don't feel really bad at all. Jason was a jerk. Now, granted, the actor does a nice job. This is nothing against the actor. When I put somebody on the jerk tier, in a way, it's kind of a good thing because that was his entire purpose, his entire role, and he served that role well. I'm going to go Jason on the jerk tier. And the crew that hung around them, individually, they're not really integral to the plot at all. They're just kind of side supporting characters, supporting players. One of them gets taken out, but I'm going to unfortunately throw the rest of them on the D tier. They just don't really serve that purpose other than to be sidekicks to the leader. Next up, we have Murray. I think of Murray with the flamethrower in the final episode. It puts a smile on my face, sheer joy from this character. And it's funny because I wasn't all that on board with Murray the first time we got to see him, but throughout that season, he got significantly better. But being the comedic relief like he is in Season 4, but also playing an integral role in saving the day, at the end of the day, my question remains, where was he at the end of the season? He's probably just resting. He's probably tired. He's not dead. Somebody tried to convince me that he's dead. I believe this is one of the best characters in the show. I'm putting Murray on the S tier. Absolutely incredible. Next up, we have the two centric Russian characters, Dmitri and Yuri. Dmitri, someone who is there to assist Hopper, even in the worst of times, who isn't necessarily, believing everything he's saying at the beginning, but he eventually realizes that Hopper, he's a bit of a badass. Then Yuri, who goes in and betrays both of our characters, all three of our characters, and you just don't like him. He's not on that level of being solely a jerk, because there is a bit of a twist with his character. After they tape him up and close his mouth, he doesn't have a lot to do, but I will say he was a big piece of why our characters were in the situation they were in the first place. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of Yuri, I'm still going to put him on the C tier. And then Dmitri, someone that you like as a character, who you are rooting for, along with Hopper at the end of the day, a nice addition to the squad. He goes on the B tier, right next to Papa. Papa. Argyle, he's the next new character. And at first, I'm thinking to myself, because this actor, he's actually really funny. Every time I see him, I'm laughing. I love his on-screen presence, but is he really needed in a show like this? Is he adding anything to this series? And my simple answer is, yeah, he actually is. He's adding that stoner humor, something that not everyone's going to be a fan of, but it is very accurate to the time period, and it's something that did start to shift Jonathan's character in a way. And, coming into the final episode, I'm thinking to myself, I've really grown to enjoy Argyle's character. He still isn't fully fleshed out or fully well-rounded, but I love the inclusion. So it's crazy, but I think I'm going to put Argyle on the A tier. I just like that kind of ridiculous humor, and he works. All right, next up we have Lucas, and the moment for me that cemented S tier for Lucas was in that final episode when he's dealing with what he believes to be the loss of Max. His performance, oh my God, I didn't know Caleb had it in him, but I'm watching that going, this kid is amazing. Like, not only stuck with me, but it emotionally impacted me on a level that I wasn't ready for at all. But throughout the season, right, he's dealing with the jocks. He's trying to figure out, okay, do I try to be like the cool kids, or do I stick with the squad, stick with the crew, and stick up for Eddie? And I love the decisions that he comes to, and his love for Max. You can feel it throughout the season. I'm putting Lucas on the S tier. Another character that I am in love with is Nancy. She's someone who has shifted quite a bit throughout all of the seasons, and this time around there's a relationship coming back into play, a bit of a love triangle, if you will, with Steve, who, crazy enough, I was rooting for Jonathan at the beginning. I'm like, oh, Nancy's gotta be with Jonathan. But now I'm like, I wouldn't be mad if Nancy was with Steve, but that's a testament to Nancy as a character. You're constantly rooting for her. She's really smart. She has a lot of wisdom. She's also savvy, right? Knowing how to work the gun in the final episode, right? Shooting that shotgun. I'm like, this is a badass moment for a badass character. And Nancy fell right into that beautifully. She also suffers some loss in this season as well when she loses her friend. We'll talk about that. Nancy's an easy one. S tier for me. Absolutely. And we're going to keep it simple, man. I put some of these characters in a row just to lift myself up just a little bit. Dustin. I love Dustin. I love Dustin's relationship with Steve. I love Dustin's relationship with Eddie in this season. And Dustin gets some moments, man. He plays it so straightforward, no nonsense at points, but there are other times when he's cracking you up because of what's coming out of his mouth. But he's also really smart, like surprisingly smart, figuring out the portals when he's piecing it all together and the lights are going off. I'm like, yes. That's why I love this character. He was meant for Susie. Susie was meant for him. By the way, Susie is not on this list for some reason. It's a pre-made template, so apologies to Susie. She would probably be B tier even with limited screen time. I love her. Dusty Bun's an easy one, though, and the poor guy got injured at the end because he was limping. It doesn't matter. He's S tier. We love him, and we love to love him. Next up, we have Robin, and Robin's dealing with a lot at the beginning of this season. She is obviously trying to figure out the romantic side of things. Does she like me? Does she not? Her relationship with Steve is awesome. She's coming into her own in this season, not only fitting more into the team, but striking that relationship with Nancy. Also someone who is consistently piecing things together. She's played so incredibly by Maya Hawke. I believe this is genuinely one of the best actors in the show. It's very obvious when she's on screen, and her screen presence is not only warranted, but needed. She is easily an S-tier character, fits beautifully into this group. Fred, Fred is dead. I was excited to see, the role that Fred was going to play in this season. It's like, oh, Nancy has kind of a little sidekick, and it was a quirky character, but I enjoyed the time that we got with him. But unfortunately, there's a tragic past, and anytime there's a tragic past at play and Vecna's in the building, well, you're gonna die, and Fred is dead. It didn't have a ton to do beyond those first few episodes, which is why I can only put him on the C tier, but I feel like I would have really liked his character, so that's something. Next up, Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly's playing a very important role in the first couple of episodes, helping these kids via therapy through the craziness that they're clearly going through, attempting to help Max. And beyond that, she doesn't really have a lot to do, but it is an important character to the kids, right? If she didn't serve that importance, I would have wondered why she was even on this list, because there's just not a lot of screen time there. But I'm still going to go C tier for someone who I wish was in it maybe a bit more. Chrissy. Oh, Chrissy. There's a lot to Chrissy. I feel like this is what people wanted Barb to be back in the day, because Barb to me was a character that I just wasn't in love with. It felt like everybody else was. Chrissy, there's something interesting there. What she's dealing with, what she's reeling with, going to Eddie to get drugs. It's like, I can't trust my boyfriend because he's a jerk, clearly, but I can come to you. And there's even a point to where you feel like she's going to give him everything that's on her mind, expel her feelings, all of these things. But we only got one episode of Chrissy. She didn't have really anything to do beyond those episodes. That being said, her purpose was huge because she is the first of many, and it sets off this series of events. So I think her character serves a bigger purpose than people may even expect, and I'm going to go B tier for Chrissy. Rest in peace. She's dead. Next up, we have the love interest for Robin. I believe her name is Vickie. That's not a good thing if I can't really remember her name, but it's not necessarily the fault of the actress. She's really charming, and the 3 times we get to see her, I was like, I want more of her, so hopefully we get more in the next season. Hopefully that relationship forms, but because we just don't get a lot, even how charming she is, I have to put her on the C tier. Robert Englund is in this show, and he's creepy. He's the eyeless man. He plays Victor Creel, the older version of Victor Creel. We get the flashbacks, and honestly, we spent more time in flashback form with younger Victor Creel. Englund was really good in the role. We get that one major interrogation scene, but that's about it. I felt shortchanged because I just wanted more of Robert Englund in this show. They were teasing him big time, and it was more so a cameo in my opinion. Listen, Victor Creel, he played a big role in the overall story, but when you bring me Robert Englund, I wanted maybe more screen time or something more for him to do. His moment was nice, but I'm going to go C tier. I was just a bit disappointed with that big cameo that they teased. Let's move into Nancy's mom, Karen Wheeler. Why is Karen on this list and her husband isn't? I don't know. Again, Susie should have been on the list, but she's here, and we're going to put her on the C tier. I like her. I think she's really charming. I thoroughly enjoy her screen presence, but it's not necessarily a character that did a whole lot this season. She's just super charming, and that's a good thing. All right, here we go. This is Vecna before Vecna. It's number 1, and we got a lot of him via flashbacks. His build-up before the transformation into Vecna, we get to see what was agitating him and how Papa didn't really tell the truth the entire time, and that rubbed him the wrong way. He also had a thing against all of the kids, and pretty much everyone in Hawkins, but that doesn't come until later. We're only judging this character before he's Vecna, but he's still a spectacularly built-up character. The performance is fantastic, and you can tell he's going to be menacing at a point, but they kind of kept that surprise from us in a beautiful way. I just thought it was well handled from start to finish. Look, he's a jerk, absolutely, but he's a dynamic character. There's more to him than that, and that's why he goes on the S tier. Speaking of jerks, it's Angela. She's the entire reason I made this tier, right? Oh my God, she's just constantly berating poor 11. I'm like, girl, you're going to have to chill. I did not like her. Good performance by the actor. Again, I have to keep this in check, like this is nothing against, we're solely talking about the character. If there was more to her than just being a jerk, I would put her maybe on a higher tier because she did. I mean, none of these other creatures and demons got to 11. She did. So she served a big purpose. But since she was solely a jerk, she's going on the jerk tier as my revenge. Feels good. Next up, we have Joyce. Joyce is such a warm character. Every time you're with her, and I don't know if this is the performance or just the way she's written, you just feel like anything is possible. I know that sounds weird, but I just love her screen presence, and I feel like even in this season where she has maybe less to do than any of the other seasons, she is still at the top of her game, and I loved it every time she was on screen. I did want more between her and the kids this time around, but when we get that moment with she and Harbour, oh my God, I have to put her on the S tier. She's just fantastic. Younger sister of Lucas, it's Erica. I really enjoy her. I started out a bit iffy on her. I think it was last season. I'm like, I don't know if I get the humor, that type of thing, but she's really grown on me. And the fact that she not only joined in on the adventure, but she was in peril, right? When Lucas was dealing with the whole Max thing, she's outside the window. She calls the boys out for anything stupid that they say, and she's even like giving up their location when she doesn't mean to. She's a source of trouble at times, but you love it. And you love that relationship with Lucas. I can't go any higher than the A tier for her, but she definitely deserves to be on that. Eddie Munson, MVP. Let's go ahead and put him on the MVP tier, not the S tier, the MVP tier. Incredible new character. I was heartbroken when we lost him. Everybody's saying they saw that coming, and I think I saw it coming, but it was so obvious to me. I'm like, they're not going to do that again, because how many times do they introduce a character, he's a new character, he's either really likable or really hateable, is that a word? And then they die. And that's what happened again. So hopefully next season, we actually get some of the main characters dying instead of just the new guy or the new bad guy, right? Eddie died, but it's not that he went out, it's how he went out. A hero. A man who, even though Hawkins turned on him and hated him and all of this stuff, went back, tried to save the day, did save the day, and saved a lot of lives in the process. And that's my boy Eddie Munson. Man, that scene where he is shredding that guitar and fending off those demon bats, I'm like, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. It was incredible. Eddie Munson is one of the MVPs of this season. No doubt in my mind, just phenomenal. Harbour. I'm looking at Harbour, and I'm thinking to myself, Harper's automatic S tier because he's awesome. He's BA. He's been through it. He sits there in that Russian prison, and he just takes it, and I'm like, well, hopefully not in that way. But how in the world is Harbour not on the MVP tier? I said I only had 3 MVPs. I lied to you. I'm going to throw Harbour on there because that entire side of the story, as much as I love Murray, as much as I love all the characters over there, Harbour is always on top at the end of the day. And David Harbour being, I believe, the best actor in the show. You could argue a couple, even newcomer Jamie Campbell-Bower, you could argue he's the best actor right now. I still think it's David Harbour. And he's phenomenal in this season as well. And his character, when he's reunited with 11, it was wonderful. I'm pivoting MVP tier. Next up, we have Jonathan. Jonathan's someone that I wanted a lot more from in the first 7 episodes, and honestly, he was kind of on track to be on that B tier until the final 2 episodes when he gets a couple of moments with Will, a couple of moments with his brother. When he looks in the mirror and he sees Will struggling, that's when you kind of get that brotherly instinct of, okay, I've not been paying as much attention as I should have, and there's even a nice, somewhat brief but beautiful conversation between he and his brother, a great emotional moment. Not a lot between he and Nancy, and he does, it's a lot of the stoner humor this time around that works well with Argyle. So I'm going to put Jonathan on the A tier, but he definitely moved up a tier in those final 2 episodes. Mike, I think it's just this whole side of the story this time around, because most of these characters that were traveling to 11 are on that A tier. Mike kind of got stuck with these guys in this situation. There wasn't that much for Mike to do past when he had that fallout with 11, and of course 11 left. He's there. I kind of felt the same way about Will. They're just kind of on the adventure. Mike obviously loves 11. Will obviously loves 11, maybe Mike. That's kind of what we got teased for. And there's a nice monologue in the final 2 episodes from Mike that I thought really brought things back home. So I'm going to go A tier for Mike. I do wish it was higher. Not as great this season as past seasons, but still solid. Steve. Come on, y'all. Steve. So if we're talking my favorite characters in general, not just this season, Steve is probably number 1. I think he's the best character in the show. This season, though, he wasn't maybe on that MVP level of an Eddie, on that MVP level of a Hopper. He had a lot to do, and I thought maybe he'd have more to do in the final 2 episodes, because I'm like, are they going to kill Steve? I hope they don't kill Steve, but are they? So while that was possible, it didn't happen. He goes through it in this season for sure. His relationship with Robin, the spark with Nancy. He's been MVP before. Can't quite get him there this time around, but he's still S tier. Come on, man. I think he's the best character in the show. We go back to Will, the other side of things, but like I said, there wasn't much for Will to do in the first few episodes. He's just kind of designated to the background when it's Mike and 11, or when it's 11 and her adventure. But then he gets his moment, or moments, in the final 2 episodes, him breaking down in the car, talking to Mike, he and his brother. There's some really good things that they're building up to for season 5, and then the chill bumps on his neck at the end. Will's back in town, and he can sense a lot of these things happening, so I think Will's going to have a much bigger role in the next season. Still going to put him on A tier for this season, though. All right, 11. She's a big reason why Stranger Things is a thing, and that's a thing, Look, she's great, and her journey, while I was somewhat struggling with it at first when she got separated from the crew, I'm like, oh no, we're here again. She's by herself. She's in the bunker. She's with Papa. But then you realize what it's building towards and bringing back out her powers. That journey is a beautiful journey, but it's also an important journey. But then you get the moment in the final 2 episodes with the helicopter. Not only that, but she's going in to save Max from Vecna. 11 for MVP, or at least one of the MVPs. I'm putting her on that tier. She's just consistently amazing. Millie Bobby Brown's performance, you love to love her. And then you have Vecna. I think I could get away with putting Vecna on the MVP tier. I think that story arc, kind of building up to Vecna in that episode or episode 7, phenomenal. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a TV show, but it's more about the arc. It's more about the writing and the story structure than the character himself. He's a great character, but the screen time just isn't quite enough to warrant that MVP conversation. But I have a really good feeling next season could be like Vecna's opportunity to do what Thanos did in Avengers Infinity War. Not see the story solely through his perspective, but get more of an idea as to where he is now mentally. Regardless, we're only happy about this because the buildup was so good. We're putting Vecna on the S, not the A, the S tier. What an amazing character. But it all comes down to Max. Max, who has never been on the MVP tier before for me. But it's time for a change. And it's time for Max to be on that top tier of characters because, oh my God, she's spectacular. I don't need to say too much. Everyone's been praising Sadie Sink's performance for good reason. She is truly top tier. Her acting has gotten significantly better, but not only that, her character, the way she is written in this season, still reeling from the loss of her brother, but trying to get past that, not managing to do it at first, but as she begins to grow, Vecna begins to come after her, and where we end up with her is tragic, it's terrible, it's sad, but it gives her the opportunity to be amazing. And when I say amazing, I mean truly amazing. This is genuinely one of the better performances in any television show I've seen this year. The running up that hill moment is obviously what everyone's going to talk about, but even in the final 2 episodes when she is, it looks like she's dead, thanks to Vecna, her emotions when she can't see, oh my God, man, it's so heartbreaking. Where is she now? The only complaint I have is I hope they don't continue to do the fake out death thing because I think this is the 3rd time with her character, so don't keep doing that. But what we got from her in Season 4 was MVP caliber. And that's it. Listen, normally at the end of this, I would do a ranking where I put them in a very specific order, but with so many characters, I feel as if the tier ranking on the tiers, that's good enough. Just know that those top 4 characters on that MVP tier, they deserve to be there, in my opinion. Max, 11, Hopper, Eddie, they stole the show for me this season. But the 3 top tiers, just incredible. What a show. What a show. I love this show so much. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please leave your lists down below. What did you think of this one? And I'll see you soon if you're subscribed. If not, never again.